Hi everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. But I've prepared the next best thing, which will seem very much like me being there. It's because it's me at my computer, and so you can just imagine me sitting at the table and my laptop is in front of me, and instead of looking at me and my laptop, you're looking at me on a screen and my laptop. For today's meeting, if you want to, it's up to you, of course, it's your meeting. Um, but I've prepared kind of not really an agenda, but a list of items that if you could talk about today and take notes on, it would be really, really helpful, kind of end of the year stuff. Um, Part of it is looking ahead to next year and thinking about just the things that we did this year that you'll need next year in terms of any content changes and thinking about parents as members and accounts and things like that. And then the other thing is considering a new site. So the thing with that is I'm going to rebuild the site. There's enough about it that it's great. We've learned a tremendous amount, but it definitely needs to be more mobile friendly and it needs to be more flexible so that parents and you and parents to parents can all interact a lot more easily with using the site, especially from a social way of being able to contact each other or get to the discussion forum more easily, things like that. So, but while it's being rebuilt, and I've got Jake, who has been working with us, will be working on it somewhat over the summer and then into the fall. So while it's being rebuilt, we'll continue to use the existing Parentopia site. And so as much as you can kind of get it in shape for next year as you want it and think about what will be successful to use it again next year, then I thought maybe the last PLC meeting for this year would be a good time to do that. So I've created a list, and this is the list. I'll get rid of me. So I'm now here. And you have access to this list, and but I just thought these are a few things I thought you might want to consider. One is to think about content changes for next year. So the various members whose status might change. So for instance, parents who are moving on to change their status to visitor. If you know there are parents who are leaving the area, if you want to delete them, their accounts. You may want to consider now, for next fall, what you want to put into the spotlight and just have that content or a picture ready, just sort of preparation. And then a major thing, of course, is if you're going to have any class changes, if you're adding a Tuesday night section or you're taking away, a section, then those are pretty significant changes. And there is information on how you can do that yourself, but I think you can work with me and with Jake, and we can help you if there's a clear change of adding a class or removing a class. And but other than that would be for the existing classes. If the Monday morning class is continuing, then if there's any content changes with that, that you would want any pictures to change. So thinking about that. And then the other major thing would be the calendar and thinking about next year's class times and days and when they're and putting those in for the next year. And then of course just the program, so if there's any other content changes that you can think of. The second thing might be to consider, we're not using the library a whole lot, and I know that creating a library of materials and handouts and that sort of thing to share with parents is a big deal, and that could be a whole summer project if you wanted it to be, but given the rebuild, you probably don't want to spend your summer doing that. But one thing you might consider for next year is to have one folder in the library of materials that would really be helpful for you, for parents to have. So the handbook, a revised handbook if there is, any forms, things like that, so that at the beginning of the year or through the year, it's a really easy way to just refer parents to that folder and say, there's an extra copy of that handout right there. Or there's an extra copy of that release form that's there. So, and having that folder, and we all know where it is, we can bring parents to it, can also be a way to encourage new parents and existing parents to kind of use the site and be familiar with the library. Um, the other thing to consider would be any sort of methods and procedures as you go forward that worked this year, or any changes you might want to make. So, for instance, consider like signing new parents up with their accounts. What are getting them into classes. And because through the year we talked a lot about things that worked, things that didn't work, things that like getting a parent into a class and then changing them from a class, or that what seemed to be helpful was to include information about creating an account right into the folders at the beginning of the year. So consider what kind of things are successful method-wise, and if there's anything that needs to be revised in terms of a handout on using the site, or as you look at it, you go, well, that's out of date now. It's something that my students created 2 years ago, and that needs to be updated. Let me know, and that's something I can take care of. So any of those methods and processes about helping people use the site, get onto the site, or methods and processes for you that helped you use the site. And I'm thinking about any roles or responsibilities. I know that Al had some time this past year and was kind of your content person. So as you look forward to next year, will those roles stay the same? Do you need somebody else to do whatever was done? Was something done that wasn't necessary? So it's just kind of a time to reflect back on kind of roles and processes and methods, and what might work better next year. Another thing would be, so that's the site, right? So that's just thinking about the existing site, and what are we going to need to almost like getting your classroom ready, right? So getting the site ready for next year, what worked, what needs to be done. The second thing of observation or reflection is to observe how you used the site this year that was successful. There are two ways that in our meetings seem to come up frequently, and one was about using the class discussion forums in the announcements areas. And that was just tremendous. Through the year, I would always get emails when you posted, and it was just delightful to see how you were using the site to sort of reinforce after a class was done, and say, this is, here are pictures of the kids and we did this, or as a follow-up to something that happened in the parent education time, or as an announcement about something was going to happen in the class. And so I would love it if you could spend some time talking a little bit about why did you think that was a good thing? Like what benefits did you see happen from doing that? For you, was that a time saver? Did you feel more confident that information was being reinforced? Did you feel emotionally closer to the parents, or feel that there was a stronger sense of community? Like what did you feel was a benefit from that? How did you feel maybe the parents benefited from doing the announcements, the discussion posts? And then if there were any impacts on the children. If you use the discussion forum or the announcements, what helped you? Was it, again, one of you had a role that was the person who did it, and that was great, because then there was no confusion. It was just going to be done, and then another staff member shared pictures, or whatever the process was. Was it that, in the middle of the year, you talked about spending time after each class, sort of doing a debriefing that you normally would do anyway, and then including in that debrief thinking about Parentopia, and then how you could use Parentopia then to sort of extend learning. And did that help? Was it pre-planning? And then as you think about next year, if that was a successful method, then what recommendations, would you have? And then the second thing seemed to be, Patty talked a lot about email communication to and from the parents and to you, and that was successful, like it was more efficient for you, or that it seemed like a good way, like the same consistent way of communicating for the parent. And so, so the same questions, why, just talk about that in terms of what benefits did you see for yourself, for the parents, for doing that, what helped you actually do it. Again, time is always a huge factor. And as you guys are talking this afternoon, think about your own comfort level in using the site and just about using technology in your normal ECFE day-to-day stuff anyway. I'm kind of thinking that in addition to, that a payoff for this effort and this tremendous effort, and again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything that you're doing with this. It is, I think a payoff for all of this is an increased sense of comfort and of, that it becomes easier to use because it becomes part more of what we do on a regular basis. Jennifer had mentioned the 21, do something for 21 days and it becomes a habit. And so if after this year and being exposed with this platform for the last 3 years, has somehow enhanced your comfort, then that's a payoff. Then, that's like a foundation that everybody builds off of. Anyway, so if you're, any observations that you have about how you see yourselves, more comfortable, more confident, less comfortable, still on a learning curve, whatever, using the site, that would be great. And then another consideration is if there were other areas of the site besides the discussion forums in the classes and the announcements and sending email, were there other sites, other parts of the site that you used or that the parents used that you found to be successful? And if so, what were they? I'm really trying to do is to learn about what we have already as we go forward and figure out what do we need to hold on to, what do we need to improve, that kind of thing. And then my observations for change, and this is just what I noted before, is that it's going to be rebuilt, and some of the considerations is to make it more mobile friendly and more social friendly. And so what I'd like you to do too is to consider some of the existing features of Parentopia and what should stay and what should go. So if you think about, these content pages, there's kind of static pages like the pictures of the ECFE team and about the West Side neighborhood and about the ECFE, at St. Paul. Should that stay? We have, there is the general forum. In Parenting A to Z right now, we've constructed it with, having this library and having a wiki and then this search engine. And, should that all stay? There's been, and if it stayed, obviously it needs to be easier to use, but, do you like those features? I think the marketplace is probably going to go. It's pretty cumbersome and I don't think it's going to really be used, and there's probably ways that we can program it otherwise. I'm running out of time. And then, yeah, so just, take a look at the sites and, what should stay, what should go. The learning together was a nice idea, but so what do you think about that as a visual representation? So that's my kind of agenda for you. Is if you can take notes, share back to me. I'll be talking with Elizabeth. I am going to try to stop by early next week. Because I'm going to be out of town from the 25th until June 11th, and you're probably going to be done then. So I want to connect somehow before I go and you go. So that's my agenda for you. Have a great PLC, and I will check in, and I love you all. Take care.